LQ here, checking in to do a tarot deck review. I've been reading tarot for almost maybe like 5 years now, and I have amassed so many decks. When I first get into a hobby, I don't know about you, but I'm one of those kinds of people who likes to get like all of the things. And so when I first started reading, I was very much into collecting all of the things, or all of the decks. But as I've spent more and more time reading tarot, I have my favorite decks. I have the decks that I go to, and I find myself just buying way less decks because I know what I like, I know what I want, I know what I'm looking for in a deck. And when I didn't know that, I would buy anything, and now I'm a little bit more discerning. And so what I want to offer to you with my tarot deck reviews is just like an overarching like view of how I approach purchasing a new deck, and also how I approach gauging whether or not a deck is valuable to me. For the purpose of these videos, I have a list of like 9 things that I'm looking at. And so I'm just gonna run through each of those things within the context of this video, and also in future videos too, as I do more tarot deck reviews. So I'll put a timestamp down below if you want to skip straight into the review, but I'm going to start by just letting you know what the things are that I'm looking at when I'm reviewing each individual deck. So the first thing I'm looking at with each tarot deck is realistic representation. That can vary from deck to deck depending on the theme of it, but what I'm looking for when I'm thinking about this variable is, are there only white people in this deck? Are there only cis people in this deck? Are there only able-bodied people in this deck? Like, what variety of representation is in this deck? I have a lot of decks that I really love to use because there's no people at all, and it's just animals. And so in that, I'm kind of looking like, how in alignment with the reality of the people that I see around me is this deck? And then if it's a fantasy deck, how well is that theme executed? The second is esoteric alignment. This one, it was more important to me when I first started reading, is a little less important to me nowadays, but I think it is really valuable as we are in a time period where tarot has gotten really popular, and lots of artists have created lots of decks. And I think that's awesome. And sometimes people are just trying to capitalize on a moment. And so I see some tarot decks out there that just deviate so far from the tarot, like the original, I'm thinking about the Rider-Waite-Smith or like the Thoth decks, without a clear understanding of them. I love it when artists get creative and when practitioners get creative with the way that they represent the archetypes, who like have a familiarity with them. But what I see a lot of the time is like, people are kind of just making stuff up. And so with esoteric alignment, I'm looking at, okay, like what is the author's background? Like, has this person read tarot for a long time? Or is this just like an art project for them? And how in alignment with other more archetypal decks, I'll say, more of like the historical traditional decks. How in alignment is this with those? And in what ways does it deviate? Are those deviations like thoughtful, or are those deviations just based on the person maybe not knowing some history? A subcategory underneath the esoteric alignment is also related to like symbolism. How well is the meaning of each card conveyed by a symbolism? I love guidebooks for tarot decks, and also if the guidebook description of the card, if I can't glean that information from the symbolism like physically in the card, then there's a misalignment there. And so what I'm also looking at is like how well the guidebook descriptions match up with the imagery. And kind of like mixing that all together also within like, you know, just like archetypal significations and like historical and traditional meanings of each of the cards. Speaking of guidebooks, the guidebook is also so important to me. I will say, as somebody who's read for a while, I don't always need a guidebook for every single deck. I find that there are a lot of decks that are just kind of a copy of the Rider-Waite-Smith, but they have different people in them. Or like, I have one deck and it's called the Crystal Unicorn Tarot, and it is a Rider-Waite-Smith copy, but with unicorns instead of people. So for that one, I don't really need the guidebook because it's going to be the same. But there are a lot of really amazing, really imaginative decks that need that guidebook to kind of ground where they're coming from with this reinterpreted imagery. And so I love to see it when, you know, we have these really visionary decks alongside really amazing writing that really offers a new perspective on these archetypes. So I'm looking at like, how effective is the guidebook? How helpful is the guidebook? If you're somebody who's really familiar with tarot already, does it offer some richness to your perspective. And also, if you're new to tarot, would this be a good deck for you? Is like the deck that you use to learn. All right, these next two are really practical. So one thing I'm looking at is the packaging, like what kind of packaging the deck is coming inside of, and also thinking about price point as well in respect to that conversation. Not necessarily packaging like, you know, the box that's delivered in when you order it in the mail, but more so like the box that the deck is stored in. Is it coming in a tuck box? You'll learn pretty quickly that I hate tuck boxes because I ruin them. I love a hard box for my tarot decks. So I'm looking at the packaging and how the quality of the card stock on the cards, how well does it shuffle, just like really, really, really practical stuff like that. Because I'll be honest with you, if a deck is beautiful, but I can't shuffle it, I can't use it. It's not gonna work for me. So yeah, there's that. And then part two is availability. Like, can you still buy this deck? There are a lot of decks that I've been super into and like backed maybe on Kickstarter or something, and they're no longer in print. So whenever I'm reviewing a deck that you can't buy, I will always let you know that you can't buy it. Okay, these next two are just like pure opinion based. So I'm gonna throw in my most favorite card in the deck and my least favorite card in the deck. And those are just like my little things. I always have a favorite card, I think, in every deck. And a least favorite, and so I'll just pick those two out and tell you why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling about them. Sometimes I don't have a favorite or a least favorite card in a deck, so I might just make it like a little 2-card reading, just pull cards out just for fun. So it'll vary from deck to deck. I think this last one actually should have gone before the favorite and like least favorite part, but I'll also let you know if there are accessories that come with the deck or that you can purchase separately from the deck. So, you know, some deck creators will make like altar cloths that are specifically like geared towards their deck. Or I've seen a lot of divination coins lately. Maybe they sell like a bag that you can put the deck inside of separately from like the original box that it comes in. So I'll let you know about accessories, especially accessories that like the deck come with outright, because it's always nice to get like little extras when you're buying something like this. So those are all of the things that I will cover in every single deck review video. Maybe I'll shake it up at some point in time, but that's what I'm working with right now. I think it's like really an all-encompassing way of just like digging into a deck. So if you didn't skip this part, thanks for staying tuned, and let's just get right into reviewing the deck for this video. So I'm sure you can tell from the title of this video that the deck that I'm reviewing is the Next World Tarot. I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it a lot. I was kikiing with a friend a few weeks back, and they were asking me about tarot deck recommendations, and I started talking about this deck, and I was like, I need to make a video about this. I can't just like keep this contained to this conversation, so that's why I'm starting with this one. So let's just start. Criteria. Realistic representation. This one gets like a 10 million out of 10. Not that I'm doing like a number scale type situation, but like honestly, this is one of my favorite decks for that particular reason. There's all kinds of people in this deck. I am picking up the World Tarot card. Okay? A queer black man. I'm picking up the Two of Wands is amazing in this deck. Okay, look at this, look at this. We have the Queen of Cups. I love a tarot deck that plays with gender. Hi, Queen of Cups. And just so many different bodies, a lot of chunky babes. Okay, a lot of queer babes, a lot of trans babes. And I love when, again, playing with gendered archetypes. So like here we have the Hierophant. In this particular deck, it's renamed the Teacher. You'll notice too about the deck that I have, I held up this smaller one, but I'm showing you, I have 2 copies of this deck. The reason why is because when I first bought it, I bought this larger one, and I have little hands, and this deck was huge. So the cards used to have like all of this information on them. Like it had a whole white border with the title at the top and then like another title at the bottom, every single card. But because they were so big, I was like, I can't do this. So I made them smaller. I cut them down. I have like a paper guillotine. And so they're much smaller. They're just like just small enough that I can shuffle them reasonably. And then I just wrote in the information on each card. So it is like a little smaller. So if you're wondering like what the actual cards look like, this, I didn't mess with these at all. I didn't edit these at all or like change them in any way. These I hacked up. Hack up your tools. It's your fucking deck. You're allowed to do whatever you want to it. The Two of Cups, okay. 10 of Pentacles. I believe this is either the Tower or the Devil. It's the Tower, yeah. Anyway, great deck. Realistic representation, 10 out of 10. Everybody's there, everybody's in it. And I really, really, really appreciate that about this deck. Yeah. So when it comes to esoteric alignment, this deck also does a phenomenal job with that. Esoteric alignment and symbolism. Again, 10 out of fucking 10. What I really, really love about this deck is it's more of like it's a Thoth-based deck. And so on every single card, you get the astrological association based on the Golden Dawn system of like tarot and astrology, significations, associations, whatever you want to call it. And so like I have like the Seven of Swords here, and I don't know how well you can see that, but it's like the sun keeps getting it. But the Seven of Swords is associated with the moon in Aquarius, and that's on the card. And I believe it's also on, like, if you've ever read with a Thoth deck, it'll be in the corner of the card as well. And also with the Thoth deck, there's keywords on every single card. And this deck has keywords too, but what I love the most about the keywords on this deck is that they're completely different than the ones on the Thoth-based deck. Not the ones... It's a Thoth-based deck, but the keywords on this card are different from the ones on the original Thoth deck, which is fucking awesome. Because what I feel like this deck does a really great job of is like, it's this deck that takes place in this like post-apocalyptic reality. And in that space, there's like, in that marginal space between the end of one way of living as a society and the beginning of another way of living, there's all of this like possibility in that space. And I feel like Christy C. Rode does a fucking amazing job with the artwork, and also a really amazing job with conveying with the keywords, and even the guidebook too, which we'll get to in a second, but I just want to name that too, like, does a fucking phenomenal job of like offering us these other ways of imagining our relationship to these archetypes, and the way that we can just kind of transcend the limitations of our present reality in a way that's supportive, and also in a way that acknowledges systemic bullshit. Period. So good. And so I love that, because for me, like, I'm a super like nerdy type person, and so when I get into something, I get into it. So like I know about all of like the tarot and the minor arcana and the decans and all of that stuff, and so to have it brought in with this deck that is like super just deviates so far from like a traditional depiction of all of the tarot cards without changing it in a way that like removes it from its original context. It's executed so fucking well, and I love it. I love it as like a beginner deck, as a learning tool. Let's just start talking about the guidebook. You're probably not surprised to hear that I'm also obsessed with the guidebook for this deck. Let me get it out of here. So I really love, for both decks, I love the guidebook for both of them. It's the same, no matter which size you get. It's like the same text. But for the smaller one, here's the guidebook. It's super cute. It's got this like sideways binding thing. And then for the larger one, here's the guidebook. And it's all the same information, just like this one is much thicker because it's so tiny. And so in this guidebook, you get to see the title of each card. What's not in here is the keyword for each card. So you don't see the keywords in here, and you don't see the astrology in here. What you do get is Christy C. Rode's phenomenal like writing for each of the cards. So I want to just pick out a random one for you. So I'm looking at the Two of Cups. So I'm going to read to you about the Two of Cups. The keyword on this card is connection, which is beautiful. Let's find the Two of Cups is the only one of its kind, as romantic love is the only love of its kind. The Two of Cups are two guys in love running between multidimensional journeys by the mere exchange of a glance, a wink, a smile. The Two of Cups asks you to cherish that glance, that spinal inflection that reminds you you're alive, that void of numbness that inflames your gut, that cosmic transcendence between time and space that only happens when you kiss. The Two of Cups is love at its highest self. It's when you realize that understanding romantic relationships and your mental, spiritual, and sexual self isn't being force-fed unwarranted psychotherapy or adapting to a predisposed mold of monogamy, polyamory, non-monogamy, and physical autonomy. It's about creating your own mold. Choosing a path that makes you feel safe, warm, and fucking gorgeous. It's about choosing lovers whose self-built foundations intersect perfectly with the frayed ends of your roots. The Two of Cups reminds you that love is real. I love it. And each description for every single card is like that, where for me, it takes you on a journey with the characters within the image. Like every card has a story based on that person. So, you know, I am looking at the Nine of Swords here, and this person has a story, and that story is related to that archetype. And so what Chrissy C. Rode does here is like, they don't deviate from the original meanings in a way that seems disingenuous, or like they don't know what they're talking about, or like they haven't been reading tarot. I'm pretty sure Chrissy C. Rode is a practitioner, if I'm not mistaken. It's just so well done. The artwork is amazing. And I really love a deck that kind of immerses you in the imagery and gives you the opportunity to like interact with whoever's in the card and to like learn through them another way of looking at things. I think that's the purpose of tarot. Like, yes, you can use it for divination and to like talking to higher self and stuff. And also talking to like your ancestors and your guides, and also for prediction as well if you happen to be psychic. And also, I think part of doing that intuitive work is being able to immerse yourself in imagery and like become something else, which is just like, this deck does a really great job of like, what's the word I'm looking for? It does a really great job of facilitating that connection. Okay, so the packaging, getting practical here. I really appreciate the way this deck is packaged. I will say, I did mention already that I cut down the bigger deck, so it is really large. I also wasn't super fond of the cardstock that it came printed on. It's kind of thin, and it's also kind of thin for the small one as well. What I did with my big one, because I cut down the edges, I was just like, I was going through a phase where like, I was cutting up a bunch of my tarot decks, and some of them I did a horrible job. This one I'm fine with how it came out. And what I did with the backs was I added like a clear contact paper. And contact paper is just like, it's usually a decorative paper that you can put over like appliances or like other arts and crafts type shit. But I wanted a clear one because I wanted to be able to continue to see the backs of these cards. So I put a clear contact paper on these just to make them a little thicker too. So my deck is like super fat, and it actually doesn't fit in the tuck box that it came in anymore. So I like made a bag for it. Partially also because it came in a tuck box, I knew I wasn't going to use it. It's like you're either a tuck box person or you're not. I ruin tuck boxes. I usually rip them like the first time I open them. So if I get a deck in a tuck box, I will not keep it in the tuck box. I hate tuck boxes. What I really appreciate about the smaller one then is like, first of all, it's really small. I love a pocket-sized tarot deck because I do kind of have small hands, and I also like to do huge spreads. And when I'm doing a huge spread, it's nice when the cards are really little. So I really, really like this pocket-sized edition of it because it fits in the palm of the hand. It's very cute. It's very fun. It's very nice. And I really love also that it comes in like just a regular, I don't know what this kind of box is called, but it comes in one of these kinds of boxes. And I love these kind because they're really sturdy, they're really durable. I usually don't mess these ones up. And also, I like to carry decks around sometimes. And so if I'm needing to like take the next World Tarot with me, I won't take my big copy because it's just in this like cloth bag that's not super protective. I take the small one because it's smaller, fits in the bag, and also because it's got this like nice hard box on it. And I really love the way that these the guidebooks are bound. I think they're very sturdy. I think they're very durable. I've written all in the larger one because I wanted to remember the keywords and I like cut them off of all of the cards. So I wrote down all of the keywords inside of here before I cut up the bigger deck. So I appreciate the packaging. I think my only thing is the tuck box thing, but that's gonna be anytime I get a deck in a tuck box, I'm gonna be upset. I'm shuffling it right now so I can get a feel for it. Yeah, I think it shuffles well. Despite the cardstock being on the thinner side, it does shuffle really well. I'm a person who likes to shuffle like I'm doing playing cards. But this is one of those decks where I'm a little careful when I'm shuffling because the cardstock is a little thinner, so it like just bends a little easier. So I'm careful when I'm shuffling this one to not crease the cards. Availability, this deck is still available for purchase. So if you want it, you can go out and get it. What I will do is I can just put some links in the description below for where you can purchase the deck from. I think you can just purchase it directly from Christy C. Road. I purchased the big one online, and then I actually was at a bookstore, a local bookstore, and I found the small one there, and I had been like thinking about getting another copy of it, so I was just like, fuck it, and I bought it. Accessories for the deck. So Christy C. Road is an artist, and they sell hella prints on their website. So you can go to their website and get prints of like the different cards, images in here, and also just other art that they've done. I haven't seen any specific accessories for the deck, and it didn't come with any. But this deck is amazing. I just admire anybody who has the capacity to like not only do so much work to create all of this beautiful imagery for an entire deck, and then to also go through the trouble of like basically writing an entire book for it, and just like the energy it requires. And I'm obsessed with this deck, y'all. That's why it had to be the first one, because it is like one of my most loved decks. I really fucking adore it. Okay, so on to my favorite and my least favorite. I'm just gonna start out by saying I do not have a least favorite card in this deck. I like every card in this deck blows my mind apart when I pull it. Period. Okay, so my card that's like, oh my god, I have to buy that deck. Like one of the ones that I saw online before I purchased it, The Lovers. Because wow, it's so fucking phenomenal. I'll have to show it to you again. Okay, so like what we're looking at here is like this person, okay? And they're looking in the mirror at themselves. And then their self is coming out like naked in the mirror and is handing them a handful of spoons. You can see the person is also like they're using a cane. So you know, spoon theory is this idea that like people who are like disabled in one way or another, physically, mentally, have a certain amount of energy to get through each day. And we refer to that as spoons. And so, you know, sometimes you have the spoons to like wash the dishes and make yourself dinner tonight. And then anything else that needs to happen today actually is not going to happen today because you don't have the capacity. And just like everybody has different amounts of energy that's fluctuating from day to day, right? And in this one, it's this like, I love the interpretation. I love thinking about the Lover's card as a card that's less about the other and a card that is about your relationship with yourself, what you give to yourself, the care that you take of yourself, and the care that you get for yourself so that you can, you know, do what you want to do or do what you need to do or just like be replenished, like feel rested. I really love this depiction, and it was like one of the ones that was just like, oh, I literally have to get this deck. Like, this is not choice based. Okay, and another one that I'm like super duper loving right now. Two of Wands. I know I showed this one to you earlier, but I adore this card. Some of it is like seeing yourself represented in something, in like a tool like this is so important. And so that's part of what I'm seeing with it. And I also love that like, it's this really interesting, like, it feels like we're in nature, but then it feels really futuristic, and then it feels like we're on another planet and it's kind of otherworldly. And I love the way that like melds and meshes with the original significations associated with the Two of Wands about like, almost like planning for the future and like getting the things that you want. And it's almost, almost a little bit of manifestation in there. It's just like, it's such a cool depiction. And yeah, it's so good. So good. Honorable mentions. I really love the devil in this card. We see Donald Trump back here in the background shaking hands with the Klan member. And there's like just a lot of like depiction of capitalism, white supremacy culture, all of that shit as the devil. And so instead of the devil being this like thing that's focused on, you know, it often gets really associated with the lovers, which I understand because of the way that the Rider Waite Smith depicts those two energies. But this is really like a whole different way of considering, like, actually, if we're going to speak to something that is the devil, what about these things that are like systemically harming people? Like, what about those? Like, what about these people that have put themselves into positions of power based on this false hierarchy that are causing harm, not just to other people, but also to like the planet that we live on, right? To our descendants, like to our ancestors. What about that? So that's an honorable mention. What else? I really love the High Priestess. I love this one because the High Priestess is always like such a dark card. And this, like, she's at the beach, surrounded by pomegranates, okay? Like, with crystals and candles. I love it because it's a more kind of open way of thinking about the High Priestess. Less about this, like, shrouded religious figure who is, like, guarding these secrets. But it feels more accessible. You know what? Final honorable mention, just because I love the Three of Swords card, like, in general, no matter what deck we're talking about, but I really like this one too. And here it is. It's very, like, it's very gory. Little anatomical moment. I just really like it. I just really love it. I just love the Three of Swords, so. That's all. All right. All right, y'all, and that is my review of the Next World Tarot. Thank you so much for tuning in for this video. If you have any suggestions for other decks that you would like me to review, please let me know in the description. Not in the description, you can't edit the description. Let me know in a comment. I'm tired. Let me know in a comment down below, and I'll think about it. I'll sit with it. If it's a deck I already have on my list to review, I'll get to it even faster. Let me know what you thought of this, if you appreciated it, if it resonated, if you're a person who's using this deck. And yeah. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time. Take care.